We are back, and you are flying high with me, the Zigzag Man, over the zone in Alameda, California, right across the bay from San Francisco and down by Lagoon. My guest today is Brother Scott, returning after a terrific show a week or so ago when we were just chatting away about the Comey-Trump situation, Russia, charges, will they be brought, what's going on. Comey testified yesterday, or the day before. This is Saturday. I think he testified on Thursday. He testified also behind closed doors, so we didn't, as a country, as an audience, get to hear the whole story. But from what we heard, what's your impression? What do you think? Were you surprised? Anything shock you?
Yeah, a little bit surprised me. I won't say shocked, but I'm a skeptic, as you know, from our last conversation about the allegations against Trump. It's my position that he's not a Manchurian candidate or a poodle for Putin, the way that Tony Blair was widely considered to be a lapdog for the White House with regard to Middle East
is he
foreign
guilty
politics.
of obstruction of justice? I guess that's basically what it's going to all come down to. Will he or won't he be impeached for that? I mean, nothing else really matters.
Well, if that's your premise, then I don't know. I don't know that nothing else really matters. Some other things might matter a lot. I don't know enough to say. I could imagine a lot of things might end up mattering more later on than it appears they will matter now. But on the narrow, legalistic charge of obstruction of justice, I think it's still a steep climb for anybody who wants to allege that. Because from what I understand, and please understand, I am no expert on this. I've never even studied this. But from what I understand from the news that I've managed to gather, obstruction of justice, in order to convict on a charge like that, you have to pretty much demonstrate what was going on in the mind of the person accused when they did whatever it is they're accused of doing in actual fact. And if their defense is, well, I didn't realize that's what I was doing, or that wasn't what I was thinking when I did it, many times that's a legitimate defense to that narrow charge. So I saw a panel discussion over the weekend, and one of the panelists was George Terwilliger, who I don't know, but I've surmised from the discussion I heard is a former Justice Department official, probably under the Bush administration. I think he's a conservative. And he, I thought, sounded impressive in that narrow, Jesuitical, legal context. He said...
was this before Comey's testimony?
No, this was an analysis of the Comey testimony and the impact it would have on the charges, on the allegations against Trump. He said the president, by definition, cannot obstruct justice. There's no way at law a charge like that can be leveled against the sitting acting president. And I don't know the law, so I have to take him at his word that he wouldn't say something that bold and stark if he couldn't back it up.
Then why doesn't he just say, fuck it, she can't charge me with anything? Why is he lawyering up?
Because according to what I gathered, if I remember correctly, he can be charged after he leaves office because he's not the president when he leaves office.
Well,
now, I didn't say he can't be charged with it.
The likelihood of that happening is like Bush and Cheney should have been charged with war crimes after they left office. That's not going to happen. We need them out of. We need the American people speaking. We need an answer. I mean, when he looked at if you can believe Comey, one of them is a liar. Who do you think? One of them is absolutely a liar.
Well, I think you're half right. I think you're half right. Both of them are liars. But that's not my point. The charge of obstruction of justice is a charge brought within the American judicial system by the American system itself against an American citizen or someone in America.
Well, if
the
they
charge of war crimes, on the other hand, wait a minute, let me finish. The charge of war crimes against Bush or Clinton or Obama, that can be brought in international courts. It's a totally different kind of charge. So we're talking apples and oranges here. On the narrow judicial obstruction charge, I understand from what Terwilliger was saying, and unless somebody comes along who refutes it, it sounds plausible to me that there's no way at law that an acting president could be charged with it. For instance, a lot of people, myself included, have drawn parallels between what Trump is alleged and often thought of as doing and what Richard Nixon did. But I don't think Richard Nixon was charged with obstruction of justice. I can't remember the specific charge against him. But according to Terwilliger, unless the law was different then than it is now, and that may be, they might have changed the law after Nixon. I don't know that history. The point is, I don't think Nixon was charged with obstruction of justice. There was some other legalese thing that he was going to be impeached for, and I don't even know that it would have been a crime. I mean, they say that you can't get impeached from the presidency except for high crimes and misdemeanors, but that has a different meaning in that context. It's a political meaning.
He was
impeached. Criminal one.
He was found guilty and he resigned.
No, that's not what happened. He resigned ahead of the impeachment because he didn't want to go through it. Bill Clinton, by
and then he was
remained in office and went through impeachment
proceedings. Then he was pardoned by the next guy. First of all, everybody rooting for Trump to be impeached for the right reasons better stop to take a deep breath. He got Pence, who's a button-down kind of guy. He's not a golf course kind of guy. He sits in the Senate. This guy is a politician as well as a cretin. And I worry about him much more than I worry about Trump on some levels. On another level, let me ask you, do you know if they gave him the codes? Does this guy have his finger on the button?
Who, Pence?
No, Trump, right now. Does he have
I don't know how that works. I don't know how that works. Probably somebody with the president has the codes. I don't know that the president has the codes.
Okay,
I don't know one way or the other.
He just decides, get a bug up his ass and decides to just bomb North Korea. Just send it.
I think there's probably safeguards in place for that. We're speculating. None of us knows, but I would imagine that there's a safeguard.
He is out to lunch, and there's no way that this committee will come to a conclusion that a president firing the head of the FBI when he or he's not being directly investigated, but his campaign and his son-in-law and his attorney general and everybody but his dog is being investigated, and he fires the head of the FBI and then makes up some kind of crap.
He could pay a terrible cost for it. He could pay a terrible cost. But I don't think that's obstruction of justice because I think here's what Terwilliger said that sticks in my mind. He goes, we have what's called, when he says we, he's talking about him and his cronies, not you and me. The system, let's call it, has a unitary executive branch. And when he was asked, what does that mean? He responded, it means that all the authority and power in the executive branch resides with the president, and everybody else under him serves at his pleasure. And he's entitled to fire an FBI director And he's entitled to
He
fire
is.
him
Of course,
because they disagree about an investigation, and that's not actionable offense. Everyone may know that's the reason he did it, and it may be utterly
You're not
corrupt,
disagreeing
but it's
on
not illegal.
First of all, I came to him 3 times. He said, "You got to take care of Flynn. He's a good guy."
I don't know. He says he has tapes. We'll find out what the tapes say.
Well,
or he implies that he has tapes.
Then
we'll find out if he does.
Then why wouldn't, if he had the tapes, he implied that he had tapes before Comey testified to try to...
He's also re-implied it after.
Okay,
he was,
yes.
At the press conference with the Romanian prime minister or president, he reiterated, he hinted that you're all going to be sorry in a little while.
Yeah, you're all going to be sorry. Like he's the big guy. Let me tell you something. He's gone down, and I don't like it because I really fear Pence. I'm telling you, I fear Pence, but it is beyond me, and I see these Democratic Congress people on the news and the morning shows. They're convinced. They're convinced that.
Well, they're going to make the most mileage out of it they can, for sure.
Right.
Even if they're not convinced, they're totally cynical. Some of them probably are convinced, some of them not so much, but they're going to make the most mileage out of it they can anyway. It's a political game.
Okay.
They're playing hardball. And it's
rare
that you see the Democrats play hardball.
Do you think he was fired do you think Comey was fired because he was investigating and he refused to back down when Trump asked him?
Well, let me ask you something.
He asked the other people to leave. He asked Sessions to walk out. He asked his son-in-law to walk out. Everybody's gone. He wants to talk to him alone, and he asked for his loyalty. And now he says...
You don't even need all of that. He more or less implied, I did it for the Russia thing. Trump himself pretty much said that.
That he did what? That he
fired him for the Russian thing.
No, he said he fired him because... no, he never said that. He said he fired him because of the way he treated, I'm quoting, Hillary Clinton in his investigation.
He said that initially. Yeah, that's right.
He said that. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Then later on, he more or less conceded that the Russia thing was on his mind.
You're not being held to anything. We both have gut feelings. They're not necessarily based on fact, based on anything. Is your gut feeling that he tried to obstruct justice on the Russian investigation?
No, because there's multiple investigations going on, and it wouldn't help. It would be maybe he is not necessarily
on
smart.
The Flynn thing. Do you think he tried to impede the Russian investigation before he fired him, and then
all right? Let's be clear.
Fired him as a stupid thing in the
I
middle
think
of the night.
he wanted it to end, and he asked for it to end, but it may not be on the tapes. And I think that's probably legal.
If he asked him, I hope, he said that he hoped. He admitted to that. What does it mean? Scott, if I go, Scott.
It means what Comey thought it meant. That's why Comey was uncomfortable.
Because my van got taken off the streets for registration. I hope you let me sleep on your couch tonight. Now, what does that mean? What does that mean?
Yeah.
That
it means you want to sleep on the couch.
Yeah. Okay. So if Trump
make no mistake, he wanted it to end. There's no doubt that he wanted it to end. He says he wanted it to end, that it's all a fraud.
What this is all about. That having that mindset to wanting to end and thinking that he can just end it by threatening, cajoling this guy is I would say a little off the wall, and I think he'll pay a price for it. That's all. I think
he'll pay a political price.
You think he was trying to stop either stop, curtail, defer the investigation? Pretty much so, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, the only question is that illegal? And Terwilliger says, no, it's not illegal.
No, but Terwilliger's full of shit. It's not.
Okay. He was a former Department of Justice official, and so he probably is full of shit, but he probably knows his shit better than you and I.
I know he knows his shit, but you know how the law is. And it's people's interpretation, the judge, this and that. I don't think this committee is going to go for that. I just don't.
I don't either. They're going to make political hay out of it.
I don't think it's a matter of I think it's bipartisan at this point. People always say that, political hay. I don't think the Republicans are jumping up and supporting this guy.
Well, they never have. Trump took the Republican Party by storm, and the Republicans never have given him much support.
We got to stop, and condolences for John McCain, whose mind passed away at those hearings.
You know what? I haven't seen that, but I've heard about it. You tell me what happened. Tell me what happened.
He starts. You just got to see. I don't want to surprise it. He starts questioning him, and he just seemed like it. Do you remember Clint Eastwood talking to the chair?
This was that times 2?
It was that times 11, because Clint Eastwood is just some old demented guy. This is some old demented guy who's a senator.
Who's got political power. And more oxycodone than he knows what to do with, maybe.
They had to bang the hammer to get him to, your time's up, sir. The only person that they had to bang the hammer for. And
what about Kamala Harris? I heard she got gavelled.
She was a star. My God, she's going to be the
Didn't they gavel her?
I don't. Well, they gavelled her for the right, not because she was just talking nonsense but
no, they wanted her to shut up. Maybe she probably made more sense.
Yeah, of course, but she was so articulate and so right on. And there are a few of these Congress people that are going to make their hay with all of this.
Mm-hmm.
I can say that it's room for them to have their 2 or 3 minutes, their 5 minutes of fame. But like some of them,
she's a rising star, just like the gal in Hawaii.
Right. But Kamala Harris, wow, she's got it. That charisma, that she'll look into the camera, that leadership, wow. That could be.
She's got it going on.
She's got it going on.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, there were some of them, not just McCain, there's some of them just asking questions. They sounded vindictive. And it shouldn't be an inquiry of, again, it should be bipartisan. And it shouldn't be just because he happens to be a Republican or just because Hillary was a Democrat. That's why they...
Did you get that feeling listening to the Democrats that some of them were just being vindictive?
Oh, no. I don't think it was...
Or you're saying the Republicans were being vindictive?
I think it was the Republicans
I see.
Coming at Comey and just, didn't listen with their eyebrows down. He said it clearly. He says, look, I met with the guy. I have recollections. I backed up everything. I talked to my superiors. I talked to my co-workers. I put it in writing, sent emails, transcribed. One of them is lying. I don't think they're both lying. Like you said, I didn't give you a chance to explain that. Where do you see Comey lying?
Let's call it misrecollecting, because innocent misrecollection of fact is very common. But I think it's more than that in his case. I think some of what he said about his motives, and I don't know about his actions, his actual words. If there are tapes, and we all hope there are, and we all hope we get to hear them, the tapes will tell the tale, at least insofar as what the tapes were able to record. And we'll find out.
I think they're buried with the income tax returns. we'll get them when we get.
Let me say this about Comey. And again, I'm an amateur, just casually watching this, but I want to say this: when he first came to light, for most of us, was in the investigation, quote unquote, of Hillary Clinton's emails. And he said he found that she was extremely negligent and reckless, or words to that effect, but her conduct did not rise to the level of criminality, presumably because she didn't mean it, it was accidental, or something like that, something really flaky that did not have the air of truth to it. I don't think Hillary Clinton is flaky in that sense. She knows too much. She's too savvy. She knew what she did, violated protocols by using a personal unsecured computer to do stuff that involved classified documents. And she appears to have lied about it, saying she never transmitted classified documents, et cetera, et cetera. There's all kinds of details in there that cut both ways. My point is, Comey said she was extremely reckless, but I wouldn't recommend prosecution because I don't think she intended to betray the country or whatever, or commit a criminal act. Mm-hmm. Although what she did could land a lot of people in jail. So he backs off that. And then later, just before the election, Comey says, after that, Comey says, I'm reopening the investigation, or the investigation is continuing, or she's still under investigation on the eve of the election, such that Hillary Clinton and all the leading Democrats were howling that he had sabotaged her chances to win the White House, that he alone, and maybe the Russians, had cost Hillary Clinton the White House.
So
I don't know how much of what he said then was true.
Going to lie about Trump? If he wanted Trump elected, basically what you're saying is he wanted Trump elected at that point.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying Hillary and the leading Democrats said he torpedoed Hillary's chances.
Right.
And I don't know that he did that at all. I don't know how much it affected the vote tallies, and I don't know if Trump still would have won the Electoral College, even though Hillary won the majority of the popular vote. I don't know how it affected that. I don't know what the analysts say. I think it was more or less dropped.
Do you suppose it helped her? You suppose it helped
her?
Yes.
I don't suppose it helped her. I suppose it hurt her.
Okay. Do you suppose she may have lost as little as one vote over it? One vote.
It's hard for me to say. It didn't help her. Let's put it that way.
I would say
I think she's wrong to blame her loss on him.
She's pissed at it. She thinks it cost her the election, and she feels ripped off. And whether it did or not, notwithstanding, does Comey, who put that shit on her, sound like the kind of guy who would say that about Trump? He would have been more than happy to have Trump be elected back then.
Comey?
More than happy.
I don't know.
His job depended on it when he did that.
Why? Why do you say that?
Well, if she were elected, do you think he would have been the head of the FBI right now after what he did?
Until he said, no, not after what he did to Hillary. She might have exercised her authority to let him go.
So I would assume in the back of his mind, one way or the other, he's thinking, well, this could be right, could be wrong to do, but worst thing that could happen is Trump's elected, which is better than Hillary. I'm of that ilk, I'm an FBI guy, I'm this, that, and the other thing. Why would he go up again? Why would he say what he said? He documented it.
Why would he say what he said about Hillary or Trump?
No, about Trump. Why the kind of guy Comey is and where he's coming from politically? You got to assume he's a Republican. He was more than happy for Trump to win. Why would he trump all this up, if you'll excuse the pun? And if he wasn't for real, he could have just humored the president along. Sure, loyalty. Oh, honest loyalty. Because he's an honest guy. He meant that. He's talking about his mother, and he's not. He may not be the purely honest. I'm not saying he wouldn't do something to get a win in a prosecution. That's how they work. You know how the feds are and all that. But he must, in his investigation, have come across what he considers to be conclusive evidence that the Russians were hacking and that the campaign was conspiring with the Russians. Now, if that includes...
I don't know why you jumped to that conclusion. I know everybody's saying that, and there's a lot of foam being generated by the mainstream press about that, but you haven't seen any hard, raw intelligence, and neither have I. And they won't let us see it. It's just conclusory statement.
We have seen some circumstantial evidence, like the campaign setting up what they call inroads before he took over and meeting with the Russians, and that. Now, after he...
What's that? What's that mean? They did it with the Australians, the Filipinos, the Chinese. They did it with everybody.
But that means they were doing things that were treasonous.
What? Now we're going way off the rails.
Well,
what are you talking about?
Let me tell you, you have to look at it. Russia is our adversary.
Whose adversary? And why?
Why are they our adversary? I don't want to get it. I know why. Because all war is bad, and because it sucks, and this, and we should all be getting along. Why is that? I can't tell you. But it is, at this point, they're our adversary, and they were...
I don't know what you mean by that.
That
means everybody in the world is the adversary of Uncle Sam, the way
I would have to say we've set ourselves up this way, except Saudi Arabia is our allies. Just think about it.
You think the Saudis don't want to exercise influence on American elections and hand out deals and make deals? And you don't think the Saudis want to do that?
You're making deals. That's not it. No. We're talking about...
Well, then what are we talking about?
Talking about hacking the democratic process by hacking the democratic... They didn't change any votes per se, but they put out false news by hacking the democratic... Pardon? They influenced the...
Ralph,
influence the election.
What is the fault? Let's go down the list.
And
I'm not
point is, we agreed last week that the money the money in the politics, if Trump is making deals with the Russians over money, don't you think that's going to affect politics?
Sure it is.
Think that
it's entirely legal.
Russia?
Hey, wait a minute. So hold on just a second. Calm down. Hold it.
All right.
Wait a minute. Those kinds of deals are SOP, Standard Operating Procedure. Ask the Bidens how they're involved in Ukraine and the oil and the natural gas pipelines and the energy business in Ukraine. Joe Biden and his son are thick as thieves with the Ukrainian government. Younger Biden is appointed as a director or some high official in some Ukrainian enterprises. They're all self-dealing to each other. They're all wanting to get in on the bottom floor. There's a whole lot of public assets for sale at bargain basement prices over in that part of the world, and everybody wants a piece of that action. Even Trump went over there to try to see if he could develop casinos and resorts or whatever. And so what? They all make deals. That's what they do.
But not people do that, yes, but not the campaign for presidency.
You're just wrong. There's a long history of them doing. They do precisely that.
Pardon me?
You do that all the time. You do that all the time. Remember when the first time you was heard of? When's the first time you heard of it? You've heard of it before. Remember the first time you ever heard of things like this? Do you recall when that was?
elections were being fooled with, or what?
When elections were fooled with, and it was
that was
Nixon.
Probably in Chicago.
Nixon was sending signals to the Vietnamese through Kissinger and others, I think, that if you'll just wait until after the election, when I get in, I'll make a better peace deal. And the Vietnamese were tipped off that the ongoing negotiations for peace in Paris between the United States and Vietnam should be prolonged until after Nixon got in. Johnson was trying to wind up the war before his end of his office, the end of his term. And Nixon sent subterranean signals to them. Chill until I get in and we'll do better for you, which was a lie. And then Reagan is accused of doing the same thing when he ran against Carter to the Iranians, saying, don't let the hostages out until after I get in because I'll make a better deal with you. And guess what? Carter was negotiating for their release, but that was held up until after the election, and Reagan got the credit for it.
Right.
And so that's been going on for decades. And that's all what you might want to call obstruction of justice and treason, and nobody's been prosecuted for it.
Well, but that doesn't mean
it's
that
standard operating procedure.
No, you don't hack Democratic Party. You don't affect the election.
Well, let's go to the hacking.
Inroads.
Let's stick to hacking.
Don't make inroads before you take office. It's not. And let me tell you something.
What do you mean it's not? I just gave you two examples where it is. And it goes back decades. So what do you mean it's not? It is. They all finagle. They all wheel and deal. They all go behind the scenes and try to trip up their adversaries domestically here in the United States by conniving with foreign interests. It's not uncommon.
But it is uncommon for a president to stop an FBI investigation or want to stop it.
Yeah, I don't think that's happened.
Where he and his are being investigated.
Nobody stopped them, have they?
Pardon me?
Has anybody stopped an investigation? I haven't heard of any investigation being stopped by anybody.
Oh, that's because Comey said, fuck you.
No, I'm not sure that's why. I don't know.
Well,
what you're saying is Trump asked him,
was he fired?
Trump said, I hope you can see your way. And Comey took it as meaning, I want you to... I hope. No, there's no mistake. Comey understood what was meant. Comey understood what was meant. And if Trump said what he's alleged to have said, Trump would have understood what was meant. What I'm telling you is, according to Terwilliger and others who have been in the Justice Department for years, that is ipso facto not illegal. That's not obstruction of justice as the law defines the term. You have to do something much more than that. To say, I don't want to put any more time or resources into this investigation for whatever reason, good, bad, or indifferent, is the president's prerogative as the law is presently constituted, and you can't touch him under an obstruction of justice charge for that. You might get him for something else. I'm not going to comment on that.
How did that ride out for him? If he would have told him that, basically he did tell him that, how did it work out for him?
It worked out terrible. Look what he's going through now.
He had this guy's advice. This guy could have said, hey, do what you want to do. You're the president. Fire the fucker.
Mm-hmm.
And he did. How'd that work out? That's what I'm saying. Was this good advice in retrospect?
Well, listen, what I hear you implying or saying is that firing Comey was a treasonous offense and amounts to obstruction of justice as the law would define it. And supplies grounds for impeachment.
As how you and I would define it, because you already told me.
Well, that's something else.
Agreed.
We're talking barroom talk. Oh, hell yeah.
All right, that's all we are.
He's a son of a bitch.
Basically talking. You're a little more educated because you've got the degree and the paper and the law degree to back you up. You're right.
I'm talking Joe Sixpack at the saloon, and I'm saying it's common, or at least it's not that uncommon. How about that?
Yeah, I know, but it's not. But doing
that doesn't make it right. It's wrong, but it's not illegal.
Okay, then it's uncommon. Okay, but like my mother used to say, if everybody jumped off the bridge, if your friend jumped off the bridge, would you jump after? He did it, that kind of thing. Okay,
well, let me wind up with this.
He's feeling the heat.
Oh, definitely. Yes,
okay.
And some Republicans are deserting.
Now, in retrospect, did you expect Comey's testimony to be this? I mean, let's face it. If you had a witness in court, would you want that guy? Is that a well-prepared witness with no attorney
let me say this.
next to him, with no notes?
Let me say this. Here's my impression of Comey. He comes off as personable, articulate, intelligent, likable, and all those things, and candid. Whereas Donald comes off as impetuous, impulsive, as Donald, quote unquote. So Comey makes a better witness in that sense, but I don't know that means that Comey has the law on his side. Trump may have the law on his side. It just may be that fact. It just may be that sad, and it may be. I mean, not that I care one way or the other, but it could just turn out that way. But let me say this: I'm more inclined to give credence this week than I was the last time we talked. I'm more inclined to give credence to the idea that somebody in Russian territory or under Russian auspices played around with software with some vendors in Florida or somewhere that had something directly or indirectly to do with the voting process and the voting tally machines. And I've been denying that. I've been saying I don't see any evidence of that for weeks and maybe months. Well, after this week, I'm thinking, well, maybe there is something to it. After that gal, Reality Winner, revealed what she revealed. You remember that?
No, I don't. Why don't you tell me?
There's a gal who is a subcontractor, works for a subcontractor or a contractor with the National Security Agency, like Edward Snowden did. And she leaked the document to Glenn Greenwald's Intercept, the group that Glenn Greenwald is associated with in some sense. She leaked the document to the Intercept that was an NSA internal classified document. And it assesses the likelihood that the Russians actually went phishing, Phishing, phishing on the Internet with some of these outfits that help tally the votes and would tap into it in an effort to get voter registration information. That's the first hard evidence that I've seen of anything like that. And so I'm going to modulate some of what I've been saying up till now. Up till now, I've seen nothing, and now I see something, and now, it's only a little something.
Who made the order for at the top in Russia to do this shit?
Well, that's a great leap forward. I'm not going to go anywhere near that because I don't see any of that yet. All I see...
You don't see that Putin runs everything in Russia, just like the powers that be in the unholy trinity of big business, government.
Well, listen, Russia is a big place. It's the largest country in the world. It spans continents. There's a whole lot going on in Russia. I don't think Putin runs everything in Russia, frankly. No, he's a strong man. He's got a lot of power, and he tends to be anti-democratic and other things. But I could see some independent Russians, as Putin described them, with patriotic feelings doing this on their own. Now, that sounds like I'm gullible because why would they do that?
Scott,
Putin's blessing.
No. It's not how it works over there. They don't have...
Well, we don't know that it came from over there. The NSA document says it came from internal military intelligence at the highest level in the Kremlin or in Russia. And that's a conclusion. They made that statement in that document that was leaked by Reality Winner, who worked for the contractor for the NSA. It was a NSA conclusion. It does not cite any raw or supply any raw intelligence information. It's just a conclusion. Now I don't know that they would say that to themselves if they didn't believe it and have something to go on. So I'm backing off a little bit from what I've been saying up to now and saying maybe there was some tampering or an attempt to tamper with some voting processes. I don't know. I'm inclined not to believe it, but it could have happened, and I could be wrong. And I'm willing to go that far.
Part,
we'll have to see.
I just want to get it straight. For the most part, you tend to believe Comey rather than Trump, given on the face of things.
Yeah, most people do. But I hope there are tapes, and I hope they come out. And I want to say this. I don't think Comey hurt Trump that much. Comey comes off as more likable, but I don't think he said anything that strikes me as particularly substantive that could be used to impeach the president.
Well,
because I think the president's allowed to fire the man.
This is what it comes down to. If you look at the testimony and read it back, you might be completely correct. If you just read the testimony, could you read this back, Mr. Jones? Well, Mr. Comey said that. But if you look at the way he presented it, if you look at the look in his eye, if you look at his expressions, if you look at his being secure when he said, you think he was hurt a little bit, maybe just damaged enough.
Politically, he was hurt. Legally, I'm not so sure.
How else can you hurt a man like that?
You could hurt him legally. You could convict him of high crimes and misdemeanors.
That's
an impeachable scenario.
He fueled the fires towards active investigation. You see, everybody.
Sure, but I think they were going that way anyway.
But
yeah.
Okay. All right. That's all. I just want to, because I feel that way, and I just wanted some confirmation. We're not. It doesn't look good for the man.
Politically, no, doesn't look too good.
All right. So that,
legally, I don't know. That's a different matter.
Well, politically and legally, I think legally, all he cares about is staying in office. So that legal matter must, they must come together on some way. If you hurt him politically, that must have hurt him in some way, just to continue the investigation. They might have come out of there. They might have come out of the private investigation and announced in a press conference, we appreciate his testimony. It just isn't anything here. We'd like, thank you.
Other than the standard corruption that goes on all the time. But let me go back one more time and go back to Nixon, because I want to say something. People could compare Trump to Nixon have forgotten what Nixon was convicted of or known to have done. He sent his goons to bust into somebody's psychiatrist's office, steal confidential information, publish it to embarrass someone who was accusing them of things that they were actually doing. The Pentagon Papers I'm talking about. Right. Daniel Ellsberg's rights, constitutional rights, were violated willy-nilly in a conscious way by a president who was a criminal by any measure of the law. And that's not all he did. They also broke into the Democratic Party headquarters and burgled the place.
And if they caught him the next day when they did it, and they said, Mr. Nixon, look at that, he would have said Halliburton or Halliburton or whatever his name is, his assistants.
Cheney?
Those thugs. Oh. They did it, and they'll sit on the sword for me, and they would have. But he denied. And that seems to be what Trump is doing now. In
But
other
he's
words,
not denying a crime.
no, but he's denying what Comey said. He says they asked him point blank in front of the guy from Romania. They said, "One of you is telling a lie. Is it you?" He said, "No, absolutely not. I'm telling the truth."
When are we going to hear the tapes? He goes, "You'll see in a short order, and you'll be surprised."
Yeah. You'll see tapes.
Well, if he's bluffing, then he just
then why didn't he
shooting
take out the
himself in
tapes
the foot.
and play him on the microphone right there?
Well, I'll tell you why. Why I can tell you one why. I can imagine a reason why. I don't know why, but I can imagine a reason why. Because he let these people hang themselves. Their allegations have started on the wrong foot, and they're getting wilder and wilder. And after they've all opened their big mouths, and I play that tape, they're all going to be eating crow. So come on, baby. Say all you know and say it without reserve, because the proof is in the pudding, and I got the pudding right here. I'll let it out when I'm ready. You know what I mean? I'm guessing.
I know.
I don't know this to be true.
That's a big bluff.
It is a big bluff. But that's what he's famous for.
Right. So this will bring him down, but you heard it here for the 1000th time, I'm sure. The frying pan,
we'll find out.
Fire. Pence is the fire. Trump is the frying pan. You got to maybe they'll find a way in these investigations to tie Pence in with Flynn and those guys. Allegedly, that's why Flynn was fired in the first place, because he lied to Pence. Mm-hmm. Well, these investigations now can go on and say, "Man, you don't lie to Payne. Do it all the time. It wasn't these guys sit and have lunch together and they sit around the office. We lied. You never knew we were in Russia. Oh my God, what a surprise! Where you going?"
Well, that would be something,
Miami?
wouldn't it?
Yeah, I'm going to Miami. It would be something, except that wouldn't end the trouble we're in. Nothing can end the troubles we're in. Because next you got
pass the popcorn. It's getting interesting.
Right, exactly. It's good theater. Hey, listen, since OJ, we really haven't had good theater like this.
Yeah, that's true.
And the nice thing, we don't get to see the blood and the gore. The blood and the gore is behind the scenes. It's to be imagined. But I can assure you there's blood and gore all over the place. Hey, look, I want to ask you this. Do you suppose that they serve borscht in federal prison?
I don't think Trump has to worry about that.
He doesn't have to. Yeah. Okay. All right. I want the man happy, and I know he's used to getting what he wants. He likes a nice glass of rich borscht in the morning.
Did you see Megyn Kelly's new show? In its inaugural episode, she had Vladimir Putin as the guest, the central guest.
Oh.
And she had, from what I understand, a long and wide-ranging interview with him and asked him about all this stuff. And he responded to the American people. He said, "What is wrong with you people? Are you all going crazy?" Blah, 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 and on, and things you might expect of him. But it's an interesting interview. You ought to look at it. He seems to have no sense of feeling exposed or vulnerable or anything. He seems he's totally dismissive.
Do you think he cares about?
I don't know. If you get a chance, watch the interview and see what you think. She said that I'll just give you one question she asked him. What about Michael Flynn? You sat next to him at dinner, and he was paid, I think, $400,000 for speaking to your intelligence staff or some government officials of some kind. And how well do you know him? And has he been commiserating with you for long? And all that sort of thing. And he said, "I know you, Kelly, more than I know him. In the last 2 days, I've had dinner with you. I've spent time with you. I've given you a tour of the facilities or whatever. And I've hobnobbed with you, in essence. I know you much better than I know Michael Flynn. I didn't even know he was going to be sitting by me. Somebody told me who he was. I never had a conversation with the guy." And he sounds like he's totally relaxed and candid. Now, he may be a very practiced liar. I'll grant you that. But
well, you know for a fact
compared
that Trump is a practice
compared
liar.
to Trump or some of these other people, he sounds more believable, frankly. More common sense, more dispassionately reasonable, and less excitable.
Well,
And it could all be a front, I grant you that, but he's pulling it off pretty good, seems to me.
yeah.
At least on
I'm
that
reminded
show.
by your little antidote of Trump looking into the camera and saying about Comey, I don't know this man. The same way as Putin must have said, I don't know this man. I wouldn't have asked for his loyalty. Why, you can ask yourself rhetorically, everybody out there, why did Trump have to remove Sessions and his son-in-law and everybody else out of that room to talk to Comey?
To try to persuade Comey to stop the investigation. Terwilliger,
Okay,
the guy
and
who
that's
I
all
thought
this
had
is
it
about.
on he
when
didn't
Congress
say Trump never
determines
tried
that,
to stop the investigation. He said it's not illegal to do that.
but
Yeah, maybe he tried to stop the
illegal,
investigation.
it is
His answer is,
illegal.
so what?
What will bring him down is firing. No, you can't stop an investigation of yourself.
Why not?
It is illegal. Why not? Maybe they'll change those laws. They'll impeach this guy over it. You can't stop.
They'll have to change the laws and then impeach him if he does it again. You can't change the law and then say it's now illegal, so what you did before we're going to charge you with, even though it was legal when you did it.
Well,
come on.
I just don't imagine it. I think they'll take their chances with the Supreme Court, because that's what it'll come to. And you heard a Trump attorney say it's not illegal, but
no, he's not a Trump attorney. He's a former justice official. I think it was under the Bush regime. He has no connection to the Trump campaign as far as I know.
Okay, so maybe there's a way, maybe he's looking at ways, as attorneys do, as you know. What's the law? We'll get you off on the law. That's okay. But I think
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, okay, but in this case, you might get off in court, but you'll be impeached, and maybe they'll bring charges later, maybe they won't. But you will be impeached over this. It just doesn't look good when you fire the guy that's investigating you and yours. He was investigating his son-in-law. What's Trump going to tell his daughter? I tried.
Right.
Well, I hope it doesn't come back and bite you, Daddy, because it really can. Because even Comey said
it could cost him politically, but I don't think he could be charged with obstruction of justice on the facts that have emerged so far. If something else comes out, it might be a different matter.
Flipping him over, they're going to investigate all these guys. It's not going to be Scooter Libby, where you sit on the sword for Cheney. These people aren't going to sit on the sword for Trump. And the investigation, they're going to talk to a lot of people, and insiders, outsiders, and they'll come to their conclusion. I think the basic conclusion that they'll come to is that must be something to cover up if he tried to cover it up. I was impressed.
We'll find out.
I think you were too. You admitted that you were somewhat surprised, if not shocked, that Comey came off as good as he did.
Personally, I don't think he dropped any bombshells, but I don't think he put much of a glove on Donald. But he came across as a more likable witness, certainly.
Okay, and enough so that he could fuel the fires of investigation.
Right.
Okay, good. Yeah, must say that.
Let's get ready for Act 2 and see how it goes.
Act 2, what would you hope? What would you want to happen? Best for the country.
That somehow, through all of this, it becomes apparent to all exactly what kind of chicanery and corruption goes on between politicians and foreign powers on both sides of the aisle, around the world, all the time. And that if you want to distinguish between Republicans and Democrats on that basis, you're going to have a real hard time doing it. Because they both do it.
Agree. Yeah. And so I say the prosecution should be bipartisan as well. And when you stop to think about it, Congress itself is so corrupt that the hypocrisy of them...
They're all doing that insider trading stuff. You know, you've read about that.
Oh, of course.
They're all getting wealthy.
And that becomes legal. It becomes legal now. Literally, insider trading is legal for them. And,
yeah, that's my point. That's Terwilliger's point. It's not a crime.
But wait a minute. That doesn't say it's not a crime.
Sure it does. It's another example of the golden rule.
That doesn't say what Trump and his campaign and Flynn and all these people, what they did was not bad. It just says that other people do bad things as well, which really isn't much of a defense when it comes down to it. It's just reality.
Well, let's be precise again. They all do bad things. But the golden rule says those who got the gold make the rules. And they wrote the rules so that it ain't a crime. The bad things aren't criminal, as according to the law. They're bad morally, ethically, principally, and all kinds of ways. But not legally. It's allowed.
Well, and they did open the investigation, so somebody agrees with me that sometimes the really bad things, I mean, you got to start at the top because so many bad things going on. It's nice when there's a Bernie Madoff that gets caught. It's nice when Cheney gets caught outing a CIA agent, and he got to go to jail. Oh, wait a minute.
Wait a minute. Let's be real. Cheney didn't pay any price for that at all.
No,
Bradley, a.k.a. Chelsea Manning, paid a price for being honest and forthright and doing us all a huge favor, like a hero. And Edward Snowden pays a price. He has to go into exile to avoid doing hard time. And same with Julian Assange, who's not even a U.S. citizen and owes no allegiance to this country legally. They all got to pay a price. Cheney never had to pay a price. Cheney can put somebody else's life at risk and get away with it.
Absolutely.
I don't know why, but that to me sounds like it should have been illegal what he did.
Scooter Libby was the guy that paid the price for that.
He took the hit for the team, yeah.
Right. And I don't think there's anybody around. That's my point. I don't think there's anybody around that's going to take a hit for this team. Trump,
yeah, they do sound like a bunch of all in it for themselves type of guys.
Right.
Every man for himself.
Scott, you said it best. It's good theater.
I'm going to say one more thing. I think that what Trump did to Comey is not going to cost him legally. But if what comes out from the investigation leads to evidence that what Trump was trying to keep hidden was his own conniving with the Kremlin for corrupt purposes, then that corruption, that conniving with the Kremlin, could be an impeachable offense. I don't know how to articulate that. I don't know what the charge would be. But if, for instance, Kushner wanting to open up a back channel to the Kremlin using Russian technology and the Russian embassy as his conduit was so that Trump could coordinate with Putin certain things going on in the United States and perform certain machinations in league with him. Well, hell yes, he's going to get kicked out of office for something. I don't know what the charge will be. It'll be something, but it won't be obstruction of justice. It'll be something else.
Well, it could lead to it, but I won't rule out obstruction of justice because of the impression that Comey's testimony made. And they asked him, I said, why do you think he did this? You know, he says, well, you know, you think he's guilty? And he's got more access to the investigation. Comey seems to think that there were a lot of things he couldn't talk about in open session that he had to go to closed session to talk about. So
I know.
Enhance the case.
It'll remain a mystery.
Right. Well,
I wish somebody would leak that.
They will eventually. I'll tell you when they'll leak it, when this committee makes a recommendation to Congress to go on. You know, these committees only have so much power too. So, but they can't come to the power to come to conclusion is what I mean. They can't conclude the investigation, but they could certainly recommend that it goes. And I'm sure Comey got behind closed doors and said, "Wait a minute, we got this, that, and that. It's been getting hot on him." And yeah, so hey.
I mean, I'm going to go back to, though, he's not going to be found to be a Manchurian candidate or Putin's poodle unless some of what Comey testifies about in closed session has to do with intercepted phone calls. Because remember, Comey or somebody said you weren't being eavesdropped on by the White House. Maybe it was Obama that said it. They weren't eavesdropping on you directly. But some of his conversations were picked up tangentially when someone else was the target of eavesdropping, and some of Trump's people were picked up inadvertently. And if there was something in there like, hey, ask Vladimir what we should do now. We don't know what to do. Ask the great leader what we should do. I mean, you found something that ludicrous, well, then it's a whole new ball game. But I don't think that's going to happen.
Okay. You think he'll stay in office for 4 years?
Oh, I don't know. The guy is so. If someone doesn't take away his tweeter, he might lose his office. He can't keep his hands off his tweeter.
That's right. And even after his attorneys advised him after this, don't say anything you say. And he said, I'll gladly say that under oath. Well, that was a big mistake. Not because they could ever get him for what he said under oath. There are either tapes or no tapes. If there were tapes, it would back up Trump. And
right.
Tapes would have been out a long time ago. If there's no tapes, it's man against man, word against word. And from that standpoint, it's a whole new ball game.
Let me throw this at you. What if there's a tape with an 18-minute gap and the secretary says he or she inadvertently erased it?
They get Mrs.
Boy, talk
Lincoln.
about deja vu.
Bring in Mrs. Lincoln. Has she passed away yet? She'd be about 111. But maybe they get her in there to kind of mess up with the tapes and say, look, she was just playing around. They were reenacting old times.
Mm-hmm.
She got carried away. Don't blame her. They could have arrested her for obstructing justice. Obstructing justice is...
you mean Rosemary Woods, right?
Yeah, I'm just kidding. She's passed away. But that was Lincoln was Kennedy's secretary, as a matter of fact. And as a matter of fact, Abe Lincoln had a secretary, Kennedy.
And Kennedy had a secretary, Lincoln. Or Kennedy was shot while riding in a Lincoln automobile, I think.
There was some craziness. Listen, as I told Jane Mansfield once, don't lose your head over this. Never said that to that woman. She was a fine woman. I hate to make fun of the dead. I hope you have a good day, Scott. And
all right, we'll reconnect again in a couple of weeks and see how it's playing out
on a regular basis, because it surprised you from the last show that we did.
Yeah, I've moved a little towards maybe something's going on here.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm glad you still have an open mind after all these years.
It remains to be seen. Yeah, we'll see what we see.
Okay.
All right.
I'm going to end this the way I do every episode, Scott. I'm going to implore you and everybody who listens to keep your dreams wet, keep your humor dry, keep your children and grandchildren out of military recruiting offices and off the laps of clerics that wear dresses. Just to be on the safe side. I always say that. And I hope people listen. Some people listen to only 3 out of 4. I've gotten feedback on that. They say they're not going to let that, if that kid wants to sit down with that nice, kindly priest, let him. What harm can he do? He's a nice man. Sit down, Butch. Enjoy.
I feel badly for them.
I do feel terrible. My God.
Especially the kids.
But, yeah, I mean, it goes on generation after generation after generation. You have to say, maybe they really want a piece of that, a little of that action, a little of that good old priest action, or they wouldn't be doing it so many times over and over again. It's a crazy world, and we're in it, Scott, so let's just keep floating away.
All right.
All right.
We'll talk again soon.
Next week, maybe.
All right. Thanks.
Bye. Bye, everybody. It was good and fun with my old buddy Scott. We learned a lot. We got problems in America, ladies and gentlemen. And all we can do is identify the questions. We don't have the answers. But we're going to keep working on it. See you next week, everybody. Adios. I'm back. You're flying high with me, the Zigzag Man, over the zone from Alameda, California, right across the bay from San Francisco, in the eastern part of the Northern California area. I am Ralph Tycho of the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network, and I have a terrific treat. It's a treat for me. It'll be a treat for you because my listeners have pretty much the same idea of what's going on in the baseball world and all of it. This is a fellow native New Yorker, upstate New York, not New York City, living in San Francisco, that across the bay that I referred to earlier on, and wrote a book, is writing a book on baseball. It got my interest for a number of reasons. First of all, you're a Met fan living in California, in San Francisco. You got the Giants. You have a Giant history in your fandom when you early on, and you've been a good Facebook friend, and I'm delighted to have you as a guest, Eric Gray. How are you?
I'm fine, Ralph. Thanks. I'm actually from Long Island, but yes, I was a Mets fan, living in San Francisco for over 40 years now, and my family has pretty much dragged me along to becoming a very rabid Giants fan. And the only trouble I have is when the Giants and Mets play each other, and I have a little bit of that, which of your children are you going to root for? So.
Yeah, I've had that trouble all my life as well, and the irony is I was a New York Giant fan growing up. I got to be 11. They moved to California, broke my heart, and I floundered fandom-wise, became unoriginal New York Met fan, and in 1966 I got to be stationed out here in California in the Air Force, and never went back to New York. Have enjoyed the Mets from a distance, and not enjoyed the Mets from a distance, depending on the moment of the day, and have seen the Giants up close. The irony is now I get to see the Mets more because MLB TV and radio and what have you, MLB TV excludes the Giants games for me out here. So it's weird. I wonder who you rooted for when the Giants played the Yankees. They were in 1962. The Giants had left New York and won the pennant with the same staff, manager Dark, Westrom as a coach, Jansen as a coach, Lockman as a coach. They came back to play the Yankees in the World Series, and they were the players that we rooted for. Now they're back in New York. Did you pick up on the Yankees when the Giants left, before the Mets?
Yeah, so I was 5 when the Giants and Dodgers left, and I love baseball, but I was at that point kind of too young to really, know what was going on. My dad was not a big baseball fan. He would take me and my brother to games just because he knew we were interested. But I started off as a Yankee fan because, by the time you start coming of age, 6, 7, 8, and the only game in town was the Yankees, and when you love baseball and, Mickey Mantle's your star player, what more could you possibly want? So, yeah, I remember the World Series in '62, and, I just so, vividly remember that, the play when McCovey hit the line drive to Richardson, and, I remember the 1960 Yankees with, Mazeroski hitting that home run for the Pirates. So, yeah, my memories of the Yankees, I'm no longer a Yankees fan, but I certainly was in those days.
And you converted when the Mets came into being?
Yeah, I was not one of the kind of people that thinks you can only like one team in your area. I like the Yankees and the Mets both. I'm from Long Island, as I said, so that really is, Mets territory, but I still like the Yankees, and, my interest in them faded after Mickey Mantle retired. I was actually at his game when they retired, at the game when they retired his number, and that's a story for my book. But, as Steinbrenner took over and...
Without knowing, I knew you were going to be on, but I had no idea of your interest in Mickey Mantle. I posted a YouTube video of Mickey Mantle's retiring his number.
Mm-hmm.
And this was in 1969, and it gave me incredible goosebumps. They had the thing run for about 20 minutes, 10, 20 minutes, half of which was unyielding applause for Mantle. And
right.
Peter Golenbach, who's my co-host on his show Golenbach University on this station, tells me that he was at that game too, as well. I was out in California at the time, but that must have been the thrill of your fandom. I don't know, what you've seen or what sticks out. How could anything stick out more than this? They had players coming back, players he played with. They set it up so beautifully, and at the end, DiMaggio gives him a plaque, and Mantle turns around and gives DiMaggio a plaque and says to DiMaggio, when they hang your plaque, I hope they hang it a little higher than they do mine. Now, this dispels to me that any rumors of their not getting along over the years, bullshit that has been exaggerated, two incredible egos, both of those egos DiMaggio wore, because Mantle was incredibly unassuming, and it was an incredibly interesting video. If you check it out on YouTube, you won't be sorry. It'll give you...
Yeah, I have both a sharp and somewhat dim memory of that day. I was 16 years old, and what strikes me is that that was a very special day for me, and I've had a couple of other days, as a father and as a fan and whatever.
No, I meant as a fan, not getting married or getting...
No. What I mean is as a father of children with baseball. I mean...
Different.
Yeah, but the thing about that day was I remember very little about it. I don't know who I was with. It was most likely my dad, because I don't know how else I would have gotten there. I didn't remember who they played or who won, and I've since looked that up. What I remember is sitting in the grandstand on the left field side down the third base line and watching him on the golf cart circle the field to what seemed like a 1,000-hour ovation. And, while I don't remember the details, and I've looked at videos and I've seen the things you're talking about with DiMaggio and all that, I just remember that ovation that just never ended. And it was, yes, for me as a fan of his, it was an amazing experience.
Glad you enjoyed that on behalf of what it's all about, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and I've met Peter Gollenbach, by the way. I was at spring training last year with my friend, and we spent the afternoon with Peter. What a great guy.
Oh, my God. I can't begin to tell you. This has been having him on my station and talking to him on Sunday nights has been one of the thrills of doing this. But not the only one. All of the wonderful podcasters that I've gathered to put this thing together, Alan Plumpkin, and I don't know where to start. Leave one out without the other. Peter Trunk from the beginning. You have David Nemec. Mark.
Well, I'll help you with one.
Mark,
One, of course, Ian Kahanowitz. And Ian has...
the immortal Ian Kahanowitz.
Ian has really, my knowing Ian has kind of helped me along a lot with my project, with people I've gotten to know through his group, The Dugout. I'm sure that's how you and I connected. And, I've not met Ian, but we've certainly exchanged messages numerous times.
And he contributes so much to the station. I do a show with Ian. I do the Giant Show. He does Genesis 2 or 3 times a week on this station. He interviews authors and celebrities, not just baseball. He's terrific. Peter Trunk and Ronnie Rabinovich do the Dodgers Show.
I met Ron last month in Minneapolis.
Oh, you were honored. As it turns out, he was honored to meet you too. Terrific. And I know I'm leaving some of you. Hal Bach does a show with Alan and I called Memories from Nedick's at the Old Garden on 48th Street, Sports Memories. Vintage sports, we go back a long way. And Hal was the head baseball writer at the Associated Press for all those many years, like 30 years. He's a professor at LIU. He was a professor at LIU afterwards, and prolific writer. David Nemec wrote the trivia maven of all time, trivia books and old-time baseball history. Like I say, George Case Jr. and Ronnie do the Washington Senators Minnesota Twins show. Patrick Tracy and I do, and he's on the DL. He's had a bad back, but we do the A's show. Timmy Haller and I have done the Giants show over the year or so or more that I'm a network, and that we're a network. And I know I'm leaving people out, but I'm just so proud of those folks that I can't begin to tell you. And I just want to say one thing while I'm babbling about my network. Over the year and over the 5 years that I've been doing podcasting, we've accumulated 6 interviews with not what they call not-the-charians or non-the-charians. Oh, anybody over 90 qualifies. That's what I want to live to be someday and have all my marbles and a bag to keep them in, so they're not scattered all over the place. And my point is, we've talked to some folks who are the most outgoing, articulate folks that have it all together, who in good voice, and then over 90, folks like Bob Wolf, and five other people that we spoke to, but Carl Erskine we spoke to, and four other people. I'm blanking on it, and I'm just 70. So can you imagine when I'm in 90? I'm going to be drooling over my baseball glove at 90 that I had when I was a kid, a Billy Martin glove. Tell me about your book, Eric, and I'll stop babbling for a few minutes.
Well, thanks, Ralph, for giving me the opportunity to talk about this. I was at a game with my wife, Lynn, my daughter, Rachel, and our friend Cheryl at AT&T. I remember this. It was in August of 11. And, one of the things that you either like or don't like about baseball is the pace, right? And I was just sitting there between innings, looking at the field and thinking. And I asked them, so what's your favorite game you've ever been to? And my wife and our friend both said, oh, that's easy. It was the last game of the 2010 season when the Giants finally beat the Padres. They got into the playoffs, and, of course, we all know what happened as a result of that. So I went home, and I sent an email to about 30 people and asking them what their favorite game was. And I said, here are my favorites. It's being at Mickey Mantle Retirement Day. It's the day I took my kids to their first game. It's the day when my kids got a picture with Dusty Baker at spring training, and a few other games. But it was just a list. It was just a short list, asking people what their favorite stories were. And I included my friend Andy in this, but just really to bust his chops because Andy is not a baseball fan. And he sent me a story that was so personal and moving to me that I knew at that point what I wanted to do, which is to write a book about people's experiences with baseball. So I started by asking my friends, and then I asked them to ask their friends, and then I would ask people at baseball games and on airplanes, in train stations, on the street, in restaurants, wherever I saw somebody with a baseball hat from a different team, or just conversation just went along to baseball, and that's how it got started. Then I joined because I know that most of my stories are Yankees or Mets or Giants related. I really wanted to expand it quite a bit, and I'm not particularly good with technology, but I figured on Facebook there had to be some way to do this, and I found Ian's group and frankly a few others, For the Love of the Game by Bill Shelley and a couple of others that I've now joined. And at that point I started meeting people from all over the country, different ages, and collecting the stories that way. So people generally send me emails. I have an email, have a description of my book that I send to people. They send me by email. Sometimes we speak on the phone and they tell me the story over the phone, then I write it up and I send it back to them for their, approval. And that's how this whole thing started. And now I'm just in the process of, trying to, wrap up story collection, which makes this a good time. If anybody's listening and has a story they want to send to me, I'm absolutely open to getting it. And I'm in the process now of starting to look for a publisher and also to edit the stories and starting to chapter them. So that, in a nutshell, that's kind of the process.
Wow. Do you have journalistic experience or just an avid curiosity?
Well, no. I mean, I did a lot of writing for work. So I worked for the Department of Labor my whole career, 30 years in the Job Corps program, which is job training for disadvantaged youth. And I did a lot of writing. Of course, I had to write reports of different, trips that I took and monitoring visits. I wrote a lot of technical assistance guides. I did a lot of training. I've written a lot of poetry and song lyrics. But no, I don't have journalistic experience per se. I just always enjoyed writing, and and it's just something I really enjoy doing.
let me ask you something about your process. Do you write when the spirit moves you, or do you make an appointment with yourself for, say, 9 in the morning till noon, or 5 in the morning till 9, or whatever? Do you make a time where you sit down to write, or are you just not put together that way?
Well, the thing is that this is not really a book that I am writing per se, because it's a book that I'm really compiling from people's, their contributions to me. I'm writing in the sense that I've written a rather lengthy introduction. My wife suggested, and it was a great idea, that for each of the chapters that I have, that I write an introduction that ties them all together. I guess a lot of my writing in this book, aside from the few of my own stories that I'll put in it, and I certainly am not planning on heavily populating this book with my own experiences. A lot of the writing that I do for this is pretty much editing, people's stories. And in my mind, I would be very organized and say, from 9 to 12 every morning I'm going to write. It doesn't always go that way. I tend to, to do it in spurts, and sometimes I'll spend 5 or 6 hours just editing people's stories, and then other times I'm just doing follow-up with folks about stories that they said they want to provide.
Well, your project is amazing to me, because you're going to get a cross-section of folks who are connected through baseball, but totally different set of ideology, a different mindset, political views, different. Do you get into any of that, their personas, or is it just about their experiences?
Well, that's a really interesting question. There are kind of two different parts to that. One of the things that you find out about baseball is that, I don't know, to me there's no other sport like it. And in terms of people just being able to talk for hours about, remember when I was at this game, or this play, or this person's statistics, all these kinds of things, and you could just go for hours about it. What I have discovered through this process is that baseball fans come literally in every stripe. I mean, the age, the geographical diversity. You could go to a game and see a punk rocker and a goth person and a nerd and a Wall Street guy. I mean, they're all these people are going to be enjoying this game because it just, in some ways, appeals to everybody. I've not really had any kind of political issues. I've been friended on Facebook by people who have different political opinions than me, and that's been, it's been eye-opening for me to deal with friends that have different political philosophies. It's been just a marvelous experience. I mean, for me, the chance to have met people, certainly become friends with people on Facebook, but also the chance to have met them in person and grabbed a meal or went to a game. It's been quite honestly something I never anticipated. That was not an outcome that I was even thinking about for this book.
Well, let me introduce you on Facebook to Steve Kedeman, if you don't know him. He wrote a book on Sandy Alderson, and he's involved, he's also a book publisher, and he may be able to help you get that thing off the ground. So go to Facebook. He's in the baseball community, in the sports community, and find him and go through him. He'll answer questions for you as to what your next step should be.
Great, thank you. I wanted to say something else about this book, which is the direction that this book has gone, and I kind of alluded to it before. The doors of the barn have just been blown off in terms of the kind of stories I've gotten. Where my original thought, I mentioned before the email I got from my friend, but the original thought for the book was, I was at Mickey Mantle's 500th home run, or I saw Sandy Koufax's, no-hitter or Barry Bonds' 7 millionth home run or whatever it was. I was expecting a lot of game-related stories that were specifically Major League Baseball related. And then people started sending me things. They would ask me, what are you looking for? So I sent them an email that give them a little guidance on what I'm looking for. And they would send me things. They completely ignored it. And they gave me stories that you couldn't dream up if you tried. And that has made this project so much better. So, I would say that this book has become more than a baseball book. It's become a human interest project. Because you don't have to be a baseball fan to have a great experience at a baseball game. And you don't even have to like baseball to enjoy reading this book. I mean, that's kind of what I'm seeing. The chapters I've written, I've got chapters such as, my first game, or to catch a ball or not, and the consequences of leaving a game early. My dad always used to say, let's beat the crowds, whatever we did. And I've not left a game early where I'm aware that I missed something big, but certainly some people have. Or, in the case of Peter Gollenbeck, not leaving a game that they thought they should leave and staying and being rewarded for it. I've got a chapter on, and one of the common themes of this book has simply been what baseball means to people in terms of their family. So there's going to be a whole chapter, if not more than one, on family connections and passing down the legacy of a team or whatever. I've got a chapter of international stories.
Please do not close that out until you hear from me. I'm going to write you a little essay, and whether you use it or not is it's your business, but at least I tried to get it in your book.
Thank you. I've got a chapter on international baseball, either baseball played in other countries and maybe how it's a little bit different or how it's followed differently, or about, people from other countries falling in love with baseball here in the United States. I've got a chapter of women in baseball. I don't mean just women watching, but I mean women in. For example, someone that I know Ian knows well, and I imagine you do too, Perry Barber. She gave me a wonderful story about umpiring. And there are a few others. And I've got, women playing baseball, either at the softball level or at, a semi-professional level. I've got a chapter on umpires and coaches and things that aren't even major league related, such as some little league stories. And,
Eric,
I'm going to have, of course, chapters on.
My good friend and a friend of the show is a woman named Sherry Davis. Look her up and befriend her. She was the first first female public address announcer in the world for the Giants.
Right. I remember her.
Please get in touch with her. She'd love to contribute to your book. And
will do.
She'd be an incredible additive.
Great. The most amazing thing about this, though, Ralph, that I want to stress, is that so many of the stories have nothing to do with the game itself, but they took place at a game, and they involve, shared reminders of people, kind of the way they bonded over things. That's the story that I'm going to have from my son's fiance. It had nothing to do with the game, with the gameplay, but it sure took place at a game. And that's been the amazing thing for me. How this, again, as I'm just repeating myself, how this project has just kind of expanded into dimensions, realms I never anticipated.
Well, I hear the passion and the enthusiasm in your voice, and that has to come through in your writing. No question.
I'm trying, yeah.
Yeah. Keep it up, and I thank you for a terrific episode. This is more fun than an old guy deserves on a Saturday morning. So
it's a thrill for me. Can I leave my email address in case people want to send me a story?
Of course.
Okay, so my email address is eric.baseballstories, plural. So BASEBALLSTORIES @gmail.com. If anybody has a story that they want to send, all you have to do is just send a message to that. Say, I heard you on Ralph's show, and then I'll send you a description. The category of story that I really most want to get if possible, are stories from people, and maybe it was something that they experienced, or maybe it's something that they heard from their parents. Stories from people from baseball in the 40s, the 30s, and before. There's a treasure trove of stories there, and I want to be able to help pass those down. And, just the other day, a friend of mine told me that her father was at the game, and Lou Gehrig said, today I consider myself the luckiest man on the face of the earth.
My mother was at that game in 1939.
Yeah,
she was 10 years old, and she told me that story about being at the game when I was 10 years old and came home from school, and Don Lawson was finishing off his perfect game in the World Series, and that's about as close. We watched that together, and she told me that story. And she wasn't a particularly big baseball fan. It was her dad, my grandfather, that was the fanatic that drew me to it. But she got ducats that day, and it was cool.
Yeah. I mean, and I realize that stories like that, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I realize that stories like that may just get passed down by word of mouth, but, that it doesn't negate the fact that people were there and watched this thing. So, in that case, that story would be told by Ben Fine. Ben Fine gets the credit, and in parentheses, as told by his daughter Roz. And,
right.
People get credit when they do these. So that's the kind of story I'm most looking for.
Well, you're going to get one from me, and I'm sure countless others. I'm so delighted to have you. All I want is a promise that you'll come back from time to time and keep me and the audience updated as to how the project is going. And we could talk about a whole bunch of different stuff when you come on.
Anytime you want, Ralph. Sometime, maybe next time, I can read you a couple of the stories that I've got.
Terrific. And I'm grateful that you blessed the microphones. And I want you to have a good day. I'm going to implore you, and end the show the way I always do, implore you and my audience to keep your dreams wet, keep your humor dry, keep your children out of military recruiting offices, grandchildren too. You don't want fodder for a family. And keep your kids off the laps of clerics that wear dresses. And if you do those 4 things, your life will be better. You don't have to, you can do 3 out of the 4, but better to do all 4. And Eric, I'm delighted you were here, and I'll send you a link to this. You could post it all over the place as soon as I publish it.
It was my pleasure and my privilege. Thanks for asking me to participate in this. It was a lot of fun.
You'll come out to Alameda, you'll have lunch, and we'll hang.
Let's plan on it.
Beautiful. Thanks, Eric. Have a
Thank
great
you, Ralph.
one. Adios, everybody.